doing live shows and music, so I have a pretty broad range of stuff.
Chris Fenwick, I was going to say Trader Joe's has pretty good frozen waffles. Just saying. Trader Joe's.
Frozen waffles? Even the mid-priced hotels have those flip-over waffles machines that you use batter and you can make fresh ones.
Well, that's been a while since I've been in one of those hotels, and
so the one time not
at
to
my
talk,
house.
the one time that you don't want to talk about something other than tech is right before the top of the hour when someone comes in. So that's the only time. If you're gonna talk about waffles, talk about it any other time except for the top of the hour. So anyway, just a little note as we stream. Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you're on YouTube and you see that little link down below, you can actually join Zoom and join the conversation. Now, once you're in Zoom, you're gonna need to join the chat, which is in the chat, which our chat is Mukana, is in the chat inside of Zoom, so you can check that out. If you're already here and you're looking at all these fine panelists and wondering, how can I be part of this? And you'll listen to us and you'll think that you know more than us, and you might. And we'd love to have you here. So if you think you can add to this conversation, we've got a bunch of new folks here today that are going to add to the conversation. We're really excited to have them. But you can join by being here early. Now we start at 5. I'm not, it's just a general conversation, a couple of us hanging out. And then at 6 o'clock, we really start having what we call the pre-show. That's kind of like the second breakfast, your first breakfast, second breakfast. This is really kind of, we're moving into first lunch. And so you have that hour of kind of free form, and then we have an hour of us getting kind of ready, and then we finally decide we're going to do a show. And so this is the show. And from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock is general questions. You can ask whatever you'd like around production, around virtual production, around media. All of those things are wide open. And we recommend that you write those questions down during the day and then bring them in, ask them. This is centuries of experience here. So it's really a great place to get your questions asked and your answer and some of your answers questioned. So it's a great place to do that. Second hour is generally something that we think is important. So it's a specific vertical that we think that we should talk about as a group. Today we're going to be talking about ZoomOSC, which we think is pretty revolutionary. We've got a lot of experts in that area and some of the founders of ZoomOSC in the panel. So it's going to be an incredible opportunity. If you have questions about that, do ZoomOSC or just OSC : and that'll tell us that question should be in the second hour instead of in the first hour where we have that presentation and that talk. So go ahead and start throwing those in. If you're interested in sharing this, if you think that this is a forum that you want friends to join, you can go ahead and use this link. Don't use your own link. That is everyone will come in as you. It'll be little Stepford wives, and we were trying to avoid that. So anyway, no one knows what that reference. I realized that there's you have to be a certain age to know that reference. Hey, there's 4 of us that went, oh yeah, I know what that means. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the questions, Bill.
Sure. James in Dublin starts us off this morning with, could Leland please outline in detail the steps he uses with Google Slides to do free transcription? And there's a note, how to set up Google Slides to accept the audio feed especially. Thanks.
Okay, Leland.
Sure.
Break
that
it
went
down.
right to me, man. Nothing like coming back and
I know
being put on
you're
camera.
up, buddy.
So,
that's what happens here. That's how this works. All right, go ahead.
all right, if you guys want to put me on the spotlight, I can give you an idea how the setup went mechanically, and then we'll describe how that works out. So what you see here is I have 5 monitors on display. This comes from 2 separate machines. So I have a Ryzen 9 here to my left and a Ryzen 7 over there on these 2 monitors. This monitor isn't really connected to the direct output of the video card. What it does is I connect an HDMI cable from the video card on that machine out to a capture card in the first machine, and then loop that back out of the capture card into a Kilo E2 NDI box sitting on my desk. That loop out goes into the monitor so I can see what's on that monitor. Anything I drag from that second source monitor, which is the main monitor, over to this desktop becomes an NDI source, as you can see, because I have an overlay on top of this as an NDI source. So what that allows me to do on Google Slides is very simple. Google Slides is simply that. You go to Google Slides, you will create, here, let me change that up so you can see that a little better. Get my monitor out of the way. Well, actually that works. So you can see how Google Slides normally opens. You would create a simple slide, a green slide, or several of them, doesn't really matter. And all you have to do is make sure that it's picking up the mic source that you want to port to it. So you're going to want to set up a separate bus to get any audio feed over to the machine that Google Slides is set up on. So it could be a laptop, could be a second monitor, could be anything. And then once you have that, you simply present. And when you present the slide, it fills the screen with green. And in order to capture the context, you simply set the text position. Now, what we discovered on here was if you go with the bottom setting, which I mentioned earlier today, it creates a bottom black bar that shows up for the context. And that little menu bar gets in the way. So you can't really overlay that NDI source very well and chroma it out and get that menu bar to go away. So what we found was there was another setting. So if you're following along with me on Google Slides, I recommend you go there on your browser and just check it out. You can set the text position to top rather than bottom. And the text size can also be small, medium, or large. I happen to be running extra large on the stuff I'm broadcasting here today, which I'm not showing at the moment. Once you select this little button for closed captioning, you see how the screen kind of drops out and the sidebars show up. You get these little pillar effects, but see how at the top of the screen, that little bar just slides down as an overlay. It's chromed out on an input on vMix. So you can see that source down here at the bottom. You can't really see it. If I double click it, you probably can't see it, but it's basically just a simple input source. And I've chromed that source out thanks to the green in the back. And now that it's running on the top of that screen, I can drag that input around wherever I want, crop it, cut it, display it on the top, display it on the bottom. But the feed is pretty accurate. So we've had really good results from it. And that's really all there is to it, honestly. Nothing more than that.
Leland, the bottom part of the question said, how do you get it set up to accept the audio feed especially? What's doing the translation?
The way I did that the translation is really just the feed. It's just like any other source on a browser. Like if you go to StreamYard or if you go to Facebook Live, you have to select a camera and an audio source that you're putting to that feed. Same thing here. Up in the upper URL, you'll see that little black video camera icon that Chrome provides. And by the way, Google Slides will not work closed captioning inside Firefox. This is a Chrome only feature. So you have to be running it inside Chrome. Once you've done that, then you could switch it out at any time. So if you decide to run your audio on a separate bus from Skype or on whatever source you want, you can send that source separately to Google Chrome.
That computer is dedicated.
You change that on the fly as well.
And that computer is dedicated to just doing that.
Well, not really. It's actually my output source too. So if I go back just to my other screen real quick, that secondary monitor like here, this is what I would do. This would be my production, and then that's an overlay, and then this would be my output feed to if I wanted to port a Zoom into a Zoom, I would be in a Zoom here, and then I would send it out to that Zoom. Mm-hmm. I would have another Zoom on that machine. But that's all I used those for. Now, the way I got the audio over here from this machine was voice meter. So I used voice meter and V-band. I have a voice meter set up here on this machine and a voice meter on this machine, and then I connect IP to IP for the audio. And that's the feed I pull in the output feed from this voice meter into there. And
that's great. Thanks,
so if you ever, I need to spell it out and actually put it in. I'll put it into some kind of. I got it.
We're expecting a highly edited video with lots of graphics. You know, by Monday would be great. Right. Victor,
we're getting.
Leland, can you show where that audio setting was again on Google Slides? I don't see that menu, and just probably user error.
When you first open Google Slides and you go to present anything, when you hit closed captioning, it should pop up a window that says, we need your mic. We need to know what mic you're going to use, or when you first open it. Mm-hmm. And then if you haven't set it, you may need to go into Chrome where you find your cookies and look for one for Google's, it should be for Google Slides, and delete the one that ports out to port 443. Or is it 433? I think it's 443. Similar to all the other ones that we have problems with. If Facebook doesn't connect to your video, you delete that cookie from Facebook. Mm-hmm. Same idea could come into play here, but not normally. Thanks. You can change on the fly, though. Normally, Google doesn't let you do that, and now it does. On that,
Leland, I'm hearing that same crackling, and you're not on your headset, your red headset, and so it's deeper in your system. It's kind of analog. It takes me back.
Good, Jeffrey, and then
I might be able to get rid of that. Hold on a second. Yeah, let Jeffrey ask.
Yeah, my question is the black bar, can you get rid of that? Can you change that color? Because I was thinking if you set up 2 of those, you could have 2 different people in 2 different rooms, and then when one person speaks, it shows up as one color, and the second person speaks, it shows up as another color, as long as they don't speak at the same time.
That would have to be internal to the API with you. And this is not connected to an API source through Zoom. We're just simply overlaying another piece of content. And the other downfall with this Google Slide system is there is no capture of text for these closed captions. So this is it. That's all you get. You would be capturing it burned into the video and not have an extra file after the fact to do any edits or anything.
They also don't even try to do punctuation, which I find is interesting.
No.
Go ahead,
No
Chris, and then
punctuation.
Courtney.
I was going to mention the clicking too. It still sounds like a buffer underrun thing. It reminds me of when I'm using a DAW and I'm trying to record something with a really low latency, but I have too many plugins running, and it just starts
That's what
clicking
it
and
is.
popping.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Courtney.
I was just wondering if you set the background color instead of green, can you set it to black? And does then the black box, could you just use a Luma key? So then just the letter text would be keyed over the top of your video without the black box?
That's
or-
a good question. The only problem there is because, well, yeah, I guess if I went with a black slide, I could do that. So you are right there, Courtney. If I were to not go with a green slide to chroma out and give me the black box and went with a black background, then I could chroma the black and just get the text. Yes.
Or Luma the black. Yep. And then,
Or
and
Luma
we've
the
also
black.
done that with,
Either
when
way.
we use EEGs for that, we've used just a DVE. You know, we just cut it out and then we Luma key it. So we cut the rest of it out and then Luma key, and then it pops out. Go ahead, Guy. The hard part you get into, by the way, is if you chroma key it, you end up in a situation where it's white. Like if you do a good job of the key,
Let me see. I can
it'll
probably do it.
fade into the background pretty quickly. So you kind of want that either a drop shadow or some kind of little outline to separate it, which is a lot of what we use in broadcast. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Leland, thanks for sharing that. I was just opening up Google Slides myself,
no
and then is it insert video or where is that insert?
No,
How
up
do you
in
get
the up in the top corner, you've got the present. Okay.
Yep.
And when you go to present, that's when your screen's going to open up. So in order for you
Got it.
to bring it in as a video source, I just happen to be capturing that video source as an NDI source and bringing that in as a layer. So it really depends on how you can manage your input. If it's something, oh no, let's see. Yeah. So there, I just managed to do what Courtney asked. I simply went back and changed the color of the slide to black instead of green, and now I'm basically wiping out all of the black color.
And the white text has a
bring it
black
down where you
edge.
can
That's
see it.
excellent.
It still,
you can
still
actually
fades
read
in a
it.
little
So-
bit. You kind of read it. It's a little
does,
soft,
if-
but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and move on.
can be done.
Thanks, Leland.
Yep,
Thank you so
go
much.
for it.
All right,
Actually,
next question.
James from Dublin has a follow-up, kinda. It's
We're gonna we got to keep moving. Like so, yeah. So
no,
we're
it's the
gonna-
next question.
okay.
was a
Okay,
lot
got it.
of
Okay,
time.
got it.
Yeah. So he says, how does the panel feel about having the way Zoom overlays panelist names in grid view? Is there a way to get rid of them completely? It's particularly annoying when they cut off the bottom of a face.
You can turn them out in your own view. So there's a show always inside of Zoom's settings that you can turn off. Always show. I leave them always on because I make sure that when I call to someone, I know who they are. You know, like I know most of you, but then we have new people, and so I got to make sure that I can do it on the fly. So I think it's a useful feature, but if you need to turn it off, you can turn it off. Go ahead, Chris.
I wouldn't question why he wants to turn it off, but I would say if it's cutting off somebody's face or part of somebody's face, they're probably framed in the frame badly anyway, and that's a bigger issue.
Yep, I agree. Yep, next question.
Moving on, Jonas Datal of Rottlingen, who was here earlier but has left, I guess. Does someone know an easy way to have people listen to a stream by calling in via landline or another phone?
Well, in Zoom, there's a number that comes with the meeting, so they can always call in and listen to it there. Has anyone tried? I think that there's a call-in feature with Clubhouse, which is this new little social media thing that I had heard about a little bit, and then Daria talked about yesterday, and I went and downloaded it, and I've listened to some calls. I haven't done any calls. We're all going to do some calls together because I'm going to try to drag you in so we can play with it. But I think that there's a way to call in for that. I don't know of other ways. What we've really looked at is streaming. So like, for instance, in Mukana, where you're listening here, if you're listening to it on your phone, there is an audio stream that Mickey streams out to Mukana, which actually sounds better than Zoom because it has some Mickey magic in it. And so anyway, so the Mukana stream is already doing that, and you have to decide whether that's enough. But to get out to a phone, what we found in the past was that usually people calling in from a phone who needed it oftentimes were actually still on something that had minutes. So if they were technologically challenged to the point where they needed a phone, they would also be on minutes instead of data, and it could actually become expensive to do that. So we stopped really worrying about that, and worried about an efficient stream to it's interesting. Most feature phones even can pull that stream. So anyway, so that's the what we kind of went to for there. But again, most conferences will have a way to call in. If you're doing it to YouTube or Facebook, I don't know how to do that unless you build, again, something. You can do a stream where they can listen to it. They can listen to that stream. That's what I always forget what I'm using. What are we streaming to, Mickey? I set it up. Shoutcast. So we're using Shoutcast, which works about 95% of the time. There's just some days where Mickey pings me and goes, "It's not working. We don't know why." Like it's not like the bill wasn't paid. It's like $14 a month or something. But we can't quite figure out what happens. But there's like a day every 90 days or 100 days that just doesn't turn on. So those are that's one of the challenges there. Any other notes about that? Yeah. But most conferencing, and if you want to get crazy about it, you could probably, on your end, you could probably take a YouTube video, the live video, and you could then put it into Zoom and then let people call into Zoom. We used to have people call in. We used to use GoToMeeting before Zoom for those call-ins. So and also free conference call. And then it's just a matter of you figuring out how you're going to pipe the audio from your show into free conference call, Uber conference, GoToMeeting, Zoom, whatever, and then just give them a dial-in. So that'd probably be a way to solve it. It's not an automatic way to solve it, but it would be a no-cost way to solve it. Next question.
Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania is up next with the new M1 MacBooks only have 2 Thunderbolt/USB 4 ports. If it's a limitation of the SoC, system on a chip, does adding a USB dock push the limits of the chip?
I don't think it's a limit of the M1 chip. I think it's just where they started. I'm going to guess that the Mac Pro with they're using the same bodies, right, for this. So the Mac Pro with two more or 4 total, as well as the next Mac Pro and possibly the next iMac will all be on the same chipset, which will be the M1X or the M2 or whatever they're going to call it. And then I think that the iMac Pro and the Pro, or maybe just the iMac and then the Pro, will have their own chipsets. So I think that they're separate. They're distinguishing these chipsets, based on what they think the user is going to want, and trying to keep those costs low. I mean, when you start adding those little components, it costs money. Bill, and then TJ.
Even in my 16-inch MacBook Pro of the last generation, I am astonished at the number of things I can hang off of it in terms of displays, outboard devices, Thunderbolt audio controllers, and things like that without stressing the chip. So I would imagine that the M1 being a tighter, more compressed and capable chip will probably be at least this good, if not better. So I wouldn't worry about it.
We're seeing people run an enormous number of things, and I'm running a lot on my M1 Mac Mini. And I don't think that there's any throughput issue. I think that they just chose that form factor to limit it to that on the way out, because that's their kind of entry level. TJ, then Jeffrey, then Andy. Then
my understanding is that it's the current chip has the 2 lanes coming in because of the chip architecture, and the OWC is now selling that new Thunderbolt dock that allows you to actually expand how many Thunderbolt ports you can have, and that is supposedly going to work great with that and not going to slow anything down dramatically.
I mean, there's only a couple lanes, but those lanes are really wide. So it's like 40 gigs or something. So it's a lot of data that it's capable of. Jeffrey.
Yeah, with Thunderbolt 3, you could only add up to 6 items into one of the buses. So that's why a lot of MacBook Pros had 2 buses for Thunderbolt 3. With Thunderbolt 4, I don't think they've released how many items you can actually hook up to a Thunderbolt 4 port. So it's got to be more than 6, is my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy?
If you look at the schematics for M1s versus the Intel Macs, they actually both have 2 Thunderbolt controllers. So it's the same number of controllers on both units. It's just the different way that the peripherals were broken out. So using additional dongles, it's the same number of controllers behind it at the end of the day.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Moving on to Spike Rogers from Berlin. And Spike asks, Alex has mentioned using pinned one Zoom calls for remote guests with a Blackmagic design multiview, rebuilding group conversations. Do you use this for a green room situation only? And when guests are on stage, do you just route the PGM view back to guests, the program view back to guests?
Yeah, so the way we do this, we have typically everybody's in a Zoom room. They come in, we feed them back a multi-view. So it's an MB16 from Blackmagic. So we can choose 4, 9, or 16 returns back to those folks. Then we essentially, that way we have complete control of their audio as ISOs. We can record the ISOs, we can record them. We get a 1080p stream from each of them. What we send out to stage, what we send out for people to watch, the folks watching, is a program output from a constellation. So so we have in the constellation, we have 2 super sources. So if we're going to do multi-view with that, we will then typically show that their super sources there. So between those 2 super sources, we then can spend as much as a day building macros for those super sources so that we can very quickly jump from lots and lots of different looks, 2 ups and 3 ups and 4 ups and 6 ups and all that stuff that you can kind of, and sometimes you're stacking the super sources on top of each other, and then you add all the graphics that sit on top of them. But that all goes through the constellation. So the constellation really runs what the viewer sees on the far end. We then do take that program feed, and one of the windows in the multi-view that returns back to the participants or the panelists is the program. And we're working on one that that you can basically use another switcher to DVE the program into the center and then put the participants around the outside edge, and so they can so they have kind of a nice return. And so we're kind of in the process of building really custom. One of the things I'm really focused on right now is building customized returns. So we're probably going to end up putting a switcher into every return for every panelist eventually, so that we can, each panelist, it might not be everyone, it might be the host and then all the panelists. But the idea is that we can then put notes and things and all kinds of other stuff in the returns so that we can go into it. One of the problems that we have, by the way, is that with that return is that Zoom, when it loses a signal, so when someone, and when I say loses a signal, when someone hits pause on their video, so if you have a panelist hit pause on the video, Zoom will immediately show you, if you're on a one-to-one connection, they will immediately show you your own signal. So it means that if someone's on air and they hit pause on their video or they lose connection, our multi-view shows up on air, which is something that we tell them probably, 50 or 60 times to never, ever, under any circumstances, turn off your camera. like once you're live, do not turn off your camera. And what we're experimenting with now is having a third, because we're now getting 1080p seemingly for everything, whether we have 1 or 2 people in it, is just having another computer jump into that and just sit there as a participant, so that they can, so that if it goes to something, it goes to gray or something like that. It doesn't go to that, which makes it a little more complicated, but it's kind of the next step. Go ahead, Leland.
I was just curious, Alex, what do you send back as your return feed? Is that a full resolution feed, or what bitrate are you pushing back to your talent?
Full res, then they get 1080p.
Full 1080p reads back? Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, so absolutely. So they're getting 1080p back. Now the audio is a little different. They're getting mix minus, of course, their own mix minus back, and then they're also getting their own mix minus back, but we're also adding ClearCom. So we have a Eclipse that is tied via the program is being tied via Dante to an Eclipse. The Eclipse is actually what's serving their audio back up, and so it goes back in. That way we can use Agent IC for remote producers as well as the hardware on our end to have that conversation, have the necessary conversations with any one of the panelists at any given time. So we can talk to any of them during the show, because there's no shared, and we know that we can pot them down, talk to them. There's no way that they can talk back and forth to us as a panelist in a show without anything going to air. So it really takes that, it takes it back to a broadcast level from our perspective of being able to, that comms is to us, you guys have heard me talk about how important comms are to me. So being able to talk to everyone all the time is pretty, it just creates a different kind of show, much tighter show when everybody's on comms. And it doesn't require, the way we have it set up, it doesn't require the far end to do anything. They're just joining a Zoom. You know, like we do all the hardware so that they don't have to. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez out of Bellingham, Washington. I believe there was a setting that allowed me to mute or unmute Zoom via Alt-A shortcut, even if I was working on a different program. Did they take that ability away, or did I just dream it? And he notes on a PC, Alt-A still works for muting, but I have to be active on Zoom first.
I don't know what is there a global...
All shortcuts work that way. All shortcuts are dependent on where your mouse resides on your screen. If you have to be in the window that you're using that shortcut in.
Go ahead, TJ.
Keyboard muting is evil. Do not use it. Use your mouse.
Yeah, so, or I think we'll talk in the second hour about other things to use, but to automate it. But if you're not doing anything, the general keyboard shortcuts we don't use that much. And next question. Now go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, on Zoom, I don't know if this is available on Windows, but on the Mac, in Zoom settings, there's a menu called keyboard shortcuts, and there is a column that says enable global shortcut, and if you have that checked, that shortcut will work while you're in any app. I don't know if it's available on Windows though.
Right. And as a note, I can tell you that we're burning through these questions pretty quick. We've been very concise. We've been doing our job as the panel of answering questions concisely. So if you're watching, this is a good time to ask more questions. We have a couple for OSC that are already building up, but ask them for OSC or the general discussion. But we're definitely gonna have room today. All right, next question.
So James in Dublin wants to know if it's possible to go back and edit Mukana questions to correct typos.
We don't let you do that. And here's why we don't let you do that. It's because I know you wouldn't do this, but or anybody that comes here would do this. But the concern you always have with voted questions is someone puts one question in, people vote it up, and then they add a word or take away a word, and it changes the meaning of the question that people had invested in. And so the reason that we don't let people edit their questions, and so what we recommend is proofreading before you do it. I think many people will pre-write them rather than write them straight into Mukana. Go ahead, TJ.
If you are like me and can't seem to type some mornings, there's a delete option. You can delete your question and retype it again.
Yep. Yeah, you can. And you can also, if you're dyslexic like me, painfully, you'll write almost everything you post in notes. Then you'll look at it and you'll read it out loud to make sure that, sometimes I have whole words and sentences that got transmangled, while I was typing, because oftentimes there's more than one thing going through my head at the same time. I'm going to steal
that. Transmangled.
Transmangled.
That's great.
I still like discombobulated.
Yeah, so the transmangled is discombobulated, just falling apart. Transmangled, which I've made up. This is the Alex dictionary, which is a lot larger than the Merriam-Webster. Is the transmangled is as you're doing something, it gets mangled up on the way through. So anyway, yeah. So but it's just like Twitter. You can't edit it. And I for a long time didn't understand why Twitter didn't do it, but then I realized that you could do a lot of damage if you got something retweeted and lots of times, and then you changed what it meant. That'd be a problem. And that's why YouTube doesn't let you replace your video. After you've already done it, people have linked to it and everything else. Anyway, next question.
James Babbitt, San Diego asks, in the price range of the low-cost kit for a non-headset mic, what's the best sounding mic that's not visible in the frame on Zoom?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it's, you're talking about form factors here. So the mics that are generally not visible start out as being sold as lavaliers, the really small micro lavaliers. And then the clever people in theater and other things have found 1,000 ways to mount a tiny capsule lavalier. They do it in Broadway in people's hair. They do it hiding it under sticky tape and things inside shirts or on collars if somebody's looking in a direction. The theatrical people have a zillion ways to mount them, and so that's probably the easiest way to get a non-visible mic hooked on somebody.
I think that the question though is more of having just out of frame, as opposed to being on the person. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Fenwick and I are using pretty good quality, but mine is cheaper than his. Just out of frame on a boom arm, and you just keep it with a cardioid condenser pointed right. It's right now, I don't know, about 6 inches from my mouth, but it is out of the frame. and you can get quite a good reception. This particular mic is, you can hear the garbage truck coming up the street right now. Is a Stellar X2. It mimics the sound of the Neumann's U67, and it's about $200. So you can hear the sirens. Hey, it's a wonderful world of audio.
What a great example of a shotgun mic. Anyway, so Marty and then Guy.
So to have a microphone out of frame and choosing the type of microphone, I guess, would depend on somewhat the acoustics of the room, but also how noisy the room is. So if you were to choose a head-worn microphone like I have here, which he's asking not, it's an omnidirectional microphone, picks up from all directions. If you use a microphone like Jeffrey is using, or that Bill just highlighted, a cardioid microphone, that will kind of focus in on the direction that the mic is pointed, which would be at you, but can also pick up background sounds. If you use a shotgun microphone, that will reject more background noise. So if you have room in the house or room from outside, you'd have a better chance of getting a cleaner signal.
That's a really big. Go ahead, Guy.
I'll let my third grader chime in here. He's got on a ThinkRight headset. I want to say it's under $50. Thanks, John Edelson, for the hat tip on that one. So that works good. But then I upped it, being his dad. You know, I got to go in there and get the proper USB shotgun mic, which I don't know how many USB shotgun mics there are on the market, but this is the Video Mic NTG. And we got it on a little stand because sometimes pulling on that headset and pulling it off all day gets annoying. So being able to just walk up and use open speakers is good for a kid or somebody that doesn't want to mess with stuff or wants the clean look and not the gamer look. So Video Mic NTG, a Rode Smart Lav would be the other thing for the $70 range if you want something under $100.
And again, the thing that you're always going to be fighting as you start to move mics away from their source is physics. So you're always kind of you can have that mic further away, but now that means it changes the whole nature of what your room has to look like. You can be pretty far away from your mic if the room is really quiet. Even with a headset mic, I have sound blankets encasing my little window because my room is very live. And so those are things you want to kind of consider as you build it. You can do a lot with mics, but as you move away, you're going to pick up more of the room, or you're going to have some kind of cardioid style mic that is going, when you lean sideways, you go out of. So that's the thing. I use a Heil PR40, which is a little bit more expensive, and I can put it in twit. I can put it right below frame. And as I sit there, it has to be a pretty tight frame. It's right below it. You won't see it even with the windscreen. You won't see it, and it gets better audio than the headset. But I know how to use it, and that's the thing. Is that the reason we send out headsets almost exclusively is because I'm sending them out to people who don't do mic work very often, and I don't want them to have to think about it, and I don't know what their room's going to be like, and that's why we kind of choose that direction. Go ahead, Bill, and then Hosmuk, and then we'll move on.
I just thought it might be worthwhile, because we have more people here than we often have, to just really quickly talk about the inverse square principle, because it deals with sound and lights and things like that are wave phenomena, and it's critical. And it simply means that if you take something that's one factor away and move it to 2, the amount of signal hitting it doesn't decrease by 50%. It increases 4 times because it's 2 square. If you go from 1 to 3, it decreases 9 times. If you move something from 1 foot to 10 foot, it's 100 times less signal hitting it. And if you don't understand that fundamental principle, mics really don't make sense, because literally moving one from 3 to 6 inches is going to make more of a difference than you'd think.
As you move that away, your voice becomes less and less the primary audio compared to everything else in the room. And that's your windows and everything else and all those other bits and pieces and the reflections. And so it just becomes, you just have to be, if you really want it out. Now, the good news about Zoom is that generally having a mic in the shot, or a headset mic or whatever has been normalized. So having whether it's a Shure mic or whatever you're putting in there, or a headset or whatever you're going to do, everyone's kind of understands it, like, oh, that person's serious, like about their audio, but they don't think anything wrong with it, which is what we used to. I think people spend a lot of time in old broadcasts, what I would call legacy broadcasts, which is most of TV, trying to hide those things. And man, do they sound bad most of the time. Hosmuk?
Yeah, the usefulness of office hours is sometimes, even though you know there's no hole and you don't want to fall into it, so you learn a lot. So today I went to the hospital to look at the room they were proposing for this medical event. And we all agreed that we're going to use a shotgun mic for that so that the talents don't have to wear. I looked at the room. I said, this is not going to work for a shotgun mic. I'm sorry. We got to relocate the venue. So just knowing that up front and understanding everything that's being said here in terms of how you use the various components in your audio chain or video chain, already I sounded like a very qualified engineer to say I reject this room. So,
well, and then there's other things, like sometimes you get into a situation where you don't get to reject the room. You have to figure it out. And so one of the things that we'll do if we have a room that we can't reject, that we don't have that choice, is we'll set up stands we'll decide, hey, we're only going to shoot this direction. So we define line of direction. And that line of direction typically is diagonal in the room. So when we set up the line of direction, if you think about the bed, we want to shoot into the corner. And that's going to create more confusion in as far as the sound waves go. You don't want to shoot straight against the wall. Then what we do is on the two walls that we decided we're not going to see, we bring in moving blankets and we put them in at what we call either 50 to 100% fullness, which means that they're wrinkled. 100% fullness is that they are half the size, of what they could stretch out to. And so you pull them in, and so there's all these wrinkles that are there. It's a really easy way to set that up. So those two walls become these big baffles that you can just throw up. Then you shoot into that corner, and you have a shotgun, and then you have to have a good boom operator. So it's not that it can't be done, but and then of course we try to persuade them to let us throw a carpet down. If they will let us, that we'll put stuff on the roof. Like we'll take C-stands and push them out, put some more up there, and so it becomes like a little tent on one side of the room and totally normal looking on the other side of the room. But we're trying to basically knock all that down, and that still won't sound perfect, but it gets through. It will literally cut that reflection down by 60-70%, which will get us to a point where with some filtering we can kind of pull it back in. Go ahead, Mickey, and then back to Hosmuk.
Exactly, make a room within a room. That
Yep.
works really well. Yeah, just wanted to comment on. Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Sorry.
Go ahead, Hosmuk.
yeah, you see, I've been too long in this office hours. I knew exactly what you're going to say. So I said, so I said to them, to make this room work, you're going to have to spend money. And since you don't have the budget, I suggest you move the room.
That's great. Go ahead, Mickey.
Okay, I recall now. Yeah. Awesome for Hasmuk for saying no to a room, because sometimes I can't even get like big, very like high level producers to say no.
Well, and one thing I will say is that one of the secrets to the success of a lot of our shows is that I'm unreasonable, or we are unreasonable as a company, is that we will ask our clients to do stuff that they go, oh, we push almost to the point where it's a little painful for them to get set up, because what we're worried about is how are they going to look and sound on the final product. Like and the thing that we say all the time that you all have heard me say before is it's easy to make content or it's easy to watch content. It is not easy to do both. You can't, it's very, very hard to make easy content that is actually watchable or listenable or part of, something that you want to walk away from. And we in production know that, but a lot of our partners will not know that. And they'll just be like, why is it so hard? It's because we want people to actually watch it and enjoy it and think it was great. And that takes work. It just does. Go ahead, Marty, then Sky, then Bill, and then eventually move on. Because we don't have as many questions, I've been giving you a little bit more time. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so we just opened up a whole can of different topics here. So so the disqualifying a room is an interesting one, but it's important to, and a lot of times when I go to a job and I say I can't capture sound here with the tools that I have. And they think I'm just being difficult because, well, it's just a microphone. Set up a shotgun, put it on a stand, and it'll work. But when you're working in very reverberant rooms, like in the Capitol Dome, for instance, and you're using a long shotgun microphone, it doesn't reject sound the same way that it would if you were outdoors, for instance. because of the physics and the way shotgun mics work. In a reflective room, if you really needed to zone in on a particular area like a shotgun microphone does, you'd be better off with a short shotgun microphone than a long shotgun microphone because of the physics and the way they work. And so having a variety of tools, like a variety of paintbrushes and colors, so different kinds of microphones fit different applications better.
And the thing to remember is that you can rent those. You know, like you don't have to buy every microphone that's out there. Renting mics. There's a lot of mics that you can rent that are relatively everything from a Sanken or a Sheps to a Sennheiser to, you know, whatever you think will make sense. So you don't have to buy every mic that you need. You just have to know which one to rent. Sky.
I'm just pondering that because everybody now has been forced to become a producer in their own living room, bedroom, guest room, whatever. I'm beginning to get a little more appreciation of what it takes to make something happen. And I think to your point, Alex, the concept of what is the end user's experience and what is it going to look like on a 6-inch screen is now a legitimate conversation we can have with clients and say, look, it's all it takes is time. And what's your quality level? And what are the resources / money? And I know Stuart would say that was the NASA quote, but those are the three building blocks. And now we can ask legitimate questions because people are playing with us behind the scenes, so to speak. And now it's up to them and giving them the choice of at what level do you want any of those three elements, time, TQR, time, quality, and resource. So, by the way, with regards to filming in a rotunda, I learned the hard way. You can add reverb, but it's really hard to take it out.
Go ahead, Bill. And then Mickey, and then we'll finally move on because we actually have some more questions coming.
And I'll do this quickly. I just wanted to make the point that how long the tail of the content is really is why this is so critical. Because the event you're happening right now and recording is going to come and it's going to go and it'll be over, people move on. But if you're recording it, that could affect 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more people. And you could educate them to what happened in that room. So really the tail of the event, how many people you're going to affect with the recording, can become vastly more important than getting it right for the people in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. Mickey, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just to add on to what Marty was saying earlier about shotgun mics indoors, the design of shotgun mics with the interference tube design, those little slits in the shotgun mic, the reason why they don't work as well indoors is because it's designed to get rid of sound that's coming in from the sides. Now, when you have those reflections, which is essentially the same voice coming back to the sides, those get rejected, and thus it thins out the voice, the speech, because it's canceling that out. Better mics to use indoors would be hypers, like shorter shotgun microphones. Sheps makes great ones. It's Sennheiser MKH50. But to answer, go back to James' original question, aside from the PR40, cheap alternative, and I've mentioned this, I think, a couple of days ago, SM58.
Yep.
Right, off screen, similar to how Alex sets it up.
Yep. Marty?
Yeah, the other thing about shotgun microphones, especially the long ones in a reverberant room, is that they're designed to reject sound that arrive at the behind the capsule, which is the vents, and the front of the capsule at the same time. So from a point source. But in a reverberant room, you have all these reflections. And so sound arrives at the barrel at different times. And that's when it can't reject those sounds.
Yeah. And so the reason that if you ask the sound question here, we spend a little bit more time on it is because I will continue to say that sound is much more than 50% of your show. You know, it is, you know, because it is when people will listen to something. I still will propose that what we call Zoom fatigue is bad audio. You know, almost always bad audio. It's that you're listening to echoes and you're listening to bad mics and you're listening to people's headsets and you're listening to the reason that we can pull this off for up to 5 hours a day and not feel fatigue is because almost all the panelists here, they may not start this way, but they all end up, if they look at themselves on YouTube, they end up with better mics and better setups and everything else because the peer pressure is intense, and but also because people then realize that it's really, really important, and they realize how it makes a difference, and so that's why we send out. That's the number one thing. If I can only send one thing to somebody, I'll send them a headset mic, just to kind of clean up that audio. All right, next question.
Moving on to Terrence Holmes of Oakland, California, who asks, looking for a good Mac screen capture app, must be Big Sur compatible. I'm making application work instructions. There will be lots of cropping and annotations.
The best one that comes with the computer is QuickTime. You can just do make screen capture. So just know that's there. It's a pretty useful tool. If I don't use that, I'm usually using an external recorder. Go ahead, Victor, and then Bill.
ScreenFlow, if you're looking for that's
good.
probably, but check with them to see if they've updated it for Big Sur.
I'm
assuming that they probably did.
It's Telestream, right? Makes ScreenFlow.
Yeah, it's Telestream. Yes,
they've been a little behind on the OS 10 updates, so I would definitely check carefully and give it a little bit of time to sort out.
Agreed.
Bill, and then Leland.
I was just going to say both of those same two. I always go with QuickTime Pro first, because even in doing a relatively large, like 80% of screen capture on my MacBook Pro, I've been able to push in and get good quality of a presenter and their content slides in doing something like a WebEx or something where they're presenting and I can move the window to half and half. And it's a very effective tool. So QuickTime Pro.
Good, Leland.
Yeah, the one that I've used in the past for quite a while before I pulled in Camtasia and TechSmith's other Snap apps as well is MonoSnap. It's available on all three platforms. It's a small utility that works really well for capturing video and snapshots. So just take a look at it. It's totally free.
And I think that one of the advantages of ScreenFlow is it'll capture your keystrokes and as a separate layer, so that you can turn them on and off and so on and so forth, which is kind of useful. Next question. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to add on. There are a lot of things in ScreenFlow that allow you to be more sophisticated in how you present to the audience. Zoom possibilities, highlight possibilities, make the mouse pointer bigger. So for people who have visual disabilities, it is a solid program if you're going to do a lot of this.
And now I will say that most of my stuff is done with an external recorder, just because I don't want to take up CPU and GPU time for it. So just know that you are sucking up time when you're sucking up resources. People often ask, why don't I get the full frame rate? It's because the computer can't keep up with doing both the screen capture and Maya or Cinema 4D or something like that at the same time. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one that works definitely with Big Sur is just good old Zoom. So if you go into the Discord in the content creation area, I made a quick little video and just to eat my own dog food and try out screen capture and then use a free editor, this was the Olive editor. So I captured it with Zoom, edited it with Olive, and then exported it that way and uploaded it to the Discord, and it looks good. I mean, it's shockingly good, and it's simple to use. So I'd recommend that. Just try it out.
Right. Great. Next question.
Moving on, Rick Coombs of Columbia, Tennessee, looking to join the ranks of cord cutters. What's the best recommendations for an indoor over-the-air antenna?
Go ahead, TJ.
I would recommend Antennas Direct. They sell directly, and they also have them available in stores. I'll post a couple of links in the Mukana chat here. I've been using one for 10 years or so. They're a little funky looking, but they really work well. And your best bet is to get it closest to the wall that is in the direction of the signal where it's broadcasting from. So if this broadcast tower is on your north side, put your antenna on the north side of your house.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I've never found indoor antennas to work very well. I have tried many of them, and in LA we have a problem because most of the transmitters are in Mount Wilson one direction, but 2 or 3 are in another direction. So if you have transmitters, depends on your location. I think there's a website somebody can chime in. Antenna. There's a website that shows, you pump in your zip code and it'll show you where all the transmitters are and which direction to point your antenna, and that helps tremendously. And put it near a window. That's the other thing. It can help tremendously because
they have ones that stick onto the windows that I've used.
Yeah, the flat ones are not that great, but yeah, if they're amplified,
yeah. TJ,
it might give you a few signals.
Your best bet's actually what they call an indoor or outdoor antenna. They're kind of ugly looking inside, but you put it inside and it will work well. I have mine in my sterile, so I don't ever see it. But it
And
works
the
great.
The thing is it is you can do a little research too. I grew up on a farm and we were pretty far away, and what I had access to was electric fence, rolls and rolls of electric fence, and I built a very complex antenna network on the roof of my parents' house to make sure I could see the Steelers game. So it was, so that was the whole, but I had to study, like, I had to buy books on antennas, and my parents were a little horrified by what I did on the roof, but it worked and I didn't fall off. Go ahead. So you can make it a little project. It doesn't have to be something you buy. It's just, things in the right place at the right direction. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, in my apartment here in Emeryville, on the shore of the bay, I have a line of sight to Mount Sutro, and those indoor antennas work awesome here. I almost get more over the air than you can get on cable. It's awesome.
That's great. Next question.
Angela Eiserman, who's often here with us early from Golden Bridge, New York. I'm having problems streaming anything but Discord on Discord. Does anyone know if it's permissions or a setting I'm missing?
Is Angela still here? We lost her.
No, she usually has to go to work, so she usually is there.
I don't know. I don't stream on Discord, so I don't know anything about Discord's streaming. So we might have to think about that. I'll go Sky and then Chris real quick, and then we'll move on.
I have made phone calls and video conference calls, both.
I think she's trying to stream, though.
Yeah, I was just giving that one experience of that Discord experience.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, it depends on what she means by stream. Is she talking about
I think that what you
video
can do,
chat,
I think you can stream to everyone in Discord, but I think that's what it's designed for, is to stream into Discord. I don't know if it's designed to stream out of Discord. Jeffrey?
So what you can do is you can set up a box that does the stream, and then you can do something similar to Zoom where you can have up to 10 people that are watching said stream, and go from there. So I'm not sure if she wants to do it in your Discord or if she wants to do it in another Discord. That's the big.
I read it
another
as,
one because mine's pretty locked down.
Yeah, I read it as she has a Discord that she's either operating and then she wants to put that onto someone else's Discord.
Let's figure out when she comes back in, because we're now accelerating. See, now we're behind on the questions. So now we have to accelerate. We're in speed round. All right, next question.
Michael Fisk of Spokane Valley says, streaming 4K movies 30 plus feet between a router and a desktop. What would be the best HDMI cable for this?
Go ahead, TJ.
I'm a little confused by this question, because what he's describing here, you would just use your Ethernet cable, just your good old fashioned
unless it's an HDMI router.
Okay, if that's the case,
let's just say if we're router and desktop,
right? What's the
best cable? Yeah, we're looking for a 30-foot HDMI cable. Like, what's the best one there, Jeffrey?
There are fiber optic HDMI cables that you can get, and a lot of them are really liking how they're functioning for more than just 4K. So you can check those out, but they're expensive.
Yeah, what we have found is once you go over 12 feet, you need to move to fiber. You got to go to glass. We just don't have any. We haven't been successful at copper over 12 feet for 4K. Note that those glass ones are directional, so make sure you plug the right direction in there, because it's they're not two-way. Next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois says, ran out of time yesterday. This group is a great example of audience engagement. Where else could someone jump in and have access to this panel and its vast experience? I learn something every single day. Gee, I wonder if there is something like a Discord.
I this is the only it's an interesting community that we built here that I don't know of any other one like it. So it's kind of slick. So we appreciate everyone here. All right, next question.
So follow the Discord link that we post early before the show every day. So watch the early part and you'll see it. Nick Tracker of Terre Haute, Indiana says, what brand model headsets are you using, Alex?
Yeah, so I have 3 headsets that I use at different times. My general headset is a Countryman H6. It's because all of our kits that we send out are exactly this. So when I'm talking to someone, I can go, do this, and this is how you bend it, and this is how you do the things. And so this is a Countryman H6. I find that it's a little bit more present with a little less bass response. I also have a DPA 4066 that is in my travel kit. And it's just because it was replaced by this. So it's in my travel kit when I go out. So you'll notice that it's a tan. If you see a tan one, it means I'm on the road. And then the other one that I carry around as a backup is the Pulson. So I have the Pulson with a little converter, and that's if for some reason my audio interfaces aren't working, I have something to plug into the computer. So those are the three that I tend to use at this point. Next question.
Okay, and I just got a warning that may not be a question, but I from Chuck Wohat of Concord, California. I find myself doing more editing now. Usually I have used headphones, but any recommendations for Poppy headphones or speakers for reference monitors while editing both music and speech?
I'll go ahead, Bill.
I used Mackie, I think 804s for a long time. They were too big for my bridge when I moved over here, so I moved to the JBL 305s, which I find to be a really good small speaker that'll sit on front of a monitor bridge and let you monitor both speech and music reasonably.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, regarding headphones, I think we had a quite long discussion about it 2 or 3 days ago. So I'd maybe go back on YouTube and check those.
We dug into it pretty deep.
Yeah, for speakers, I was gonna recommend the exact same family, although I would recommend the JBL 308. The great bang for the buck speakers. I think they're $200 US for each speaker, so a pair would be 400. Depends on your budget. Really, you could go into crazy budgets for.
I was gonna say, like,
prices for it.
All my studios, because it's me. All my studios that I'm doing work in generally have Genelecs. So the Genelec is kind of the one that I lean towards, but they're not necessarily the most cost effective. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and another, like, if a little more, a little cheaper than Genelecs, if you want something that's like sort of a magnifying glass, especially if like you're trying to clean up sound, would be Blue Sky. They're not a very popular brand, but they have like really good detail. They don't always translate well if you mix on them, just because they're a little bright, but you will hear every single noise if you're trying to clean up something.
Sky, just call it out. You don't need to fill up the screen with it.
Well, that's the standard. That's the workhorse that's been around forever. These are what?
Just call it out. Just call it out. Yep. You got to call it out. Just read out the thing. What is it? We can't see it.
They're Sony 7506s.
7506s. Okay, great.
Thank you. Sorry.
And we do
those replace the MVRV6s.
Right. Next question.
They're the workhorse. Yep.
Next question comes from Ken Jones in Seattle. Are the send audio levels we set up at the beginning of a Zoom meeting maintained in a breakout? Others have said that they see their settings reset on entry to a breakout room. How do we find a happy medium when the audio source is set to original sound?
The breakouts we're not really managing in the same way that we do with the webinar, so it's a much different thing. But we do have a meter. You can always go check your settings. Most of us are managing our audio externally, so we don't have to have it reset into Zoom. Next question. We're going to move pretty quickly here because we're running out of time.
James Babbitt is asking Leland particularly, is there a new 24 to 30 inch computer monitor that you would recommend?
The monitors I'll just say I've been using with really good results are the very inexpensive Scepter models that you can find on Amazon. They are a 16:9 1080p monitor with dual HDMI ports on the back so you can split the signals. $120 a piece, and they work really well. It's an IPS monitor, so very thin in frame and style and very lightweight, and works really well on floating monitor stands so that they don't weigh them down. And I've had really good luck with them. I have 3, looking at 4 of them here soon.
Great. Next question.
Christian Turi of London says, do you guys use any meeting joining tool assistance? I recently started using Meter, MEETER, currently free, which allows one-click meeting join for Zoom and 30+ services, but I want to see if anything else is out there.
No, but I'm checking that out. That looks like a great one. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll come back and have a conversation about that. Meter. So it's everybody's homework. Next question.
G.I. Wheeler of Ellicott City says, can you change LUTs on the Blackmagic Micro Studio Camera 4K?
You cannot. So you can't change the LUT on the Micro Studio. You can do a lot with shading it. We've actually gotten the Micro Studios to match URSAs that are running log by going in there and working with all the colors. You need a chart to kind of pull them all together, but you can get it to where it'll cut into it in a live show. Not perfectly. The 10-bit signal is really important. You need enough data in the stream to get back to making it work. Now, next question.
And the final one in general questions today, Jake Hamilton of North Hollywood asks, my new 4K monitors don't appear to be making any difference. Either everything is way too small or when sized appropriately, it looks the same as my own cinema display, my old cinema displays. What am I missing?
Go ahead, TJ.
Unfortunately, Jake's not missing anything. That's kind of the way this is working right now. 4K displays are used to provide you a retina type of resolution, just making everything clear, not necessarily making everything bigger. I want things bigger.
Right. Go ahead, Bill.
So I struggle a good little bit with all the different displays I have here and getting the display to recognize the signal as what I want it to. I think in the way Mac manages monitors, the way laptops, MacBook Pros manage
it just
monitors,
makes it, it makes it cleaner.
They look at it, decide what it is, give you that. They give you the ability to change it. But I find that if I have 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 monitors hanging off a system, I have to be careful about the order I launch them, get that one set right, drag it to another monitor, and then launch something else on my home monitor, or else it will see that external display and rejigger everything to fit that.
Great. And now we're shifting gears. So it's 8 o'clock, and we're going to move on to our more vertical special guests here. And so I'm going to hand off the kind of the introductions to Andy. Andy Carluccio is here, and he is one of the creators of ZoomOSC. And it was one of those things that I'd heard about ZoomOSC, and then one of our early mornings at 5 a.m. We were talking about it. Grant was showing some of the stuff he was doing, and Andy happened to be in the call, and so they went back and forth a little bit. As I watched them talk about it, I was like, number one is that I think that we should do a whole hour on this so that we really understand it. Number two, if there's enough interest in our group, and we're gonna do a lot more with it, I think that we could really become a kind of a think tank for pushing this forward. And so anyway, we're really happy, and I know that Andy invited a couple other folks, and so I thought maybe he could do some of the introductions to everyone. Go ahead, Andy.
My pleasure, and thank you for having us, Alex. It was funny, I watch our downloads pretty regularly to see what people are using it with, and it's typical for us to get downloads. It's not typical for us to get like 70 downloads in an hour on a single day, all referencing office hours. So I knew something was up. So I figured I'd had to check in and see what it was all about. And I was really happy to stumble across this. So I am Andy from Liminal Entertainment Technologies. I'm the creator of ZoomOSC, project manager for a couple other things that we do here. And I'm really happy today to be joined by some of our power users. I'll just go through rapid fire and introduce some of the folks on the panel so we are familiar with our use cases. I'll just go across my screen here. I've got Joe Shea, who is coming from USC, right? And created a integration for ZoomOSC that is used for stage management, which was really impressive. And I'm so super happy to have Joe today. Then I have Eamon Farrell, a Virginia-based video designer. He was the first person to use ZoomOSC and works a lot in theater and in performance art. His company is Anonymous Ensemble. I have L. Wilson Spiro, who's the community manager for Trickatronic, creators of the Isadora Media Server, which is another great tool that I think this group would be well served to look into. And it's one of the most common integrations for ZoomOSC. So I thought that would be good to have Elle on today, just to talk a little bit more about that and some of the cool things you can do on the video processing side. Still in, it looks like back in attendees we have Felipe Nardi, who
we can bring him in. So
that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Felipe is coming from us in the world of Magic. And has created a bunch of integrations with the Stream Deck that I know he'll want to show. And a lot of custom development.
If you came in with Andy and you'd like to join just make sure to raise your digital hand. So just do raise hand, and then it's easier for us to see you.
Thank you. So a large variety of use cases. I figured I could talk about this till kingdom come, but the use cases can really speak for themselves, and that these users represent a variety of deployments. It's all about the integrations at the end of the day, and so I'm happy to have them here. I think I should also just give sort of a macro shot on what ZoomOSC is, just so we're clear as we kind of move through the questions and frame it that way. So, when I think about Zoom in the current situation that we're in, I see kind of two use cases. I see, particularly for ZoomOSC. So I see people who want to manage a Zoom meeting better. They want to have audience or whatever it is, schools, anything like that. They want to have a Zoom meeting that is basically better wrangled or has more control surfaces or tools or things that make it easier to manage. And so ZoomOSC helps you with that. The other thing ZoomOSC can help you with is people who want to use Zoom like a CDN, which is what most of you all are probably doing. And it helps you then basically tell Zoom what you want it to do so that you can get the thing back from it that you're looking for. And so we are a bidirectional open sound control interface, allows you to do things that you could do in the user interface, but with an OSC command. And then we also send you OSC data about your Zoom meeting back to you over a return line so that you can do things like get the order of the gallery view so that you can remap it, track it, and create ISO feeds or something like that. And this pairs nicely with sort of a suite of things that we're working on, from NDI integrations to Zoom all the way through our Streamweaver products, which do protocol transmission. So this kind of comes together as a family of things that are designed to help you with your remote events, both for the management side and for the CDN side. So that's kind of the big picture of what ZoomOSC is. And I brought today a couple of integrations that we have. I've just got some other NDI sources on my net that I'll switch between and show. I'm happy to go anywhere into any detail. And thanks again for
absolutely. And so this is a really rare opportunity for everyone who's watching to ask questions. So as Andy and our other guests start to walk through those, we're going to spend the first probably 10 or 15 minutes letting, maybe even 20, 25 minutes, letting Andy and the guests talk a little bit about how they use it. Your job as an attendee, of course, is to ask more questions so that we fill up the rest of the show with answering your questions and making sure that you walk away with a clear understanding of how this works. Go ahead, Andy.
Awesome. So I think I just want to go around the horn and talk about some of the integrations from our contingent that's here today, and then maybe that'll inspire some questions. Felipe, if you're good, I'd love to show off your Stream Deck and what you've been doing with OBS and some of the magic shows.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. So my name is Felipe Nardi. I'm from Brazil, and I'm working on an integration for ZoomOSC directed into the Solar Performer. I'm working with magicians that are doing virtual shows by themselves, and I want to give them the ability to control and provide an incredible experience to their audience. And it's oftentimes very difficult to operate things like bring spectators on screen and interacting. And every time that you want to interact with someone, there is this little friction of asking them to unmute, and this happens every time, or just finding the right spectator to interact with. So with ZoomOSC, a lot of these problems can be solved. And because ZoomOSC is very technical, I'm building an integration on Stream Deck that is focused towards the layperson, the one-person show. So I just want to show you guys here what this looks like. I have my Stream Deck here, and I have a couple of keys on it. Let me show you. I have a demo call where I have the gallery view. And right here, I have my second screen display. So let's say I imagine that I have OBS that's capturing this screen here, and that I can send to spectators the view of myself and whoever is pinned on the screen. So I built this integration where they can just cycle through the spectators. So let's say they are not looking at, nobody's seeing me cycling through the spectator, just me. But when I find someone that looks a fit for what I want to do, I will press this button in the middle. And what it will do is note that I am unmuted. And when I press it, I was muted and it's unmuted. And I can combine that button with OBS to bring a screen with me and the spectator. So just by cycling through spectator, by pressing a button, I was able to just press and bring that into screen with me unmuted and ready to interact. There is another thing that I've created too, which is the I call it pre-show buttons, because in Magic, oftentimes you will want to select specific spectators to a specific trick. So you can create buttons and assign names to this button. So when you press this button, it will change the pinned spectator to wherever is pinned at the moment. And I also created another button for highlighting reactions. because when you have a 200 people show and you want to get some of the reactions of a magic show, it's impossible to just unmute everyone. So I have this button that when I press it, it will unmute just a selection of 10 people. And randomly. And if they're doing have audio feedback, I can mute them, and I will have another button that will change these 10 people selection so that I can unmute again and get 10 random people to hear their reactions. So these were the 3 things that I built with ZoomOSC so far. And I got a group of 30 magicians work with me on this.
Awesome. That's really great. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about your using the OSC chat functions to automate some stage management stuff?
Yeah, sure. And actually, so hello, everybody. I'm Joe Shea. I'm assistant theater manager at USC in the School of Dramatic Arts. And over there, we've kind of switched from, I was a master electrician, so I know a little bit of coding, so Node.js, and then ZoomOSC came in the picture, and that's when our production started to go all through ZoomOSC and controlling it that way. But so far, let me actually pull up my preview. So for our shows, this is one of our new theater for right now. And basically over here, we're using ZoomOSC and then piping it into OBS, but doing like Andy said earlier, it's auto cropping everything. So each person would have their own scene in OBS. And then that's all configured through Node.js. And then QLab is running all the queues. So it's also going through Node.js, and then control OBS that way for those scenes. And also the chat feature, one idea I had while I was going through this, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if the stage manager could control QLab? So basically from in the chat from ZoomOSC, if somebody was named SM, then they could send just a go command or anything that was like G, or it could even be like a semicolon enter, and then it would look for Node.js would look for somebody named exactly SM, and then have the message semicolon or just G or go or whatever command you want, and then that would send a OSC command into QLab. So yeah, that is basically what I've been working on.
Awesome. And it's super helpful too, to have the remote stage manager able to actually get into the remote ops. I love the chat integrations a lot because it helps get around some of like the other solutions would be like a VPN, or even our own stuff, Streamweaver, right? This is a great way around some of the hassle of getting that set up, and it's a great use case. Eamon, do you want to talk about Mad Forest and Flight?
Sure. So I've been around ZoomOSC since its very inception. And it was actually a student of mine at UVA, and I was teaching projections design, and I discovered that he did coding, which is very useful. And he did some work for my company, Anonymous Ensemble. And we had been, over a year ago, we had started playing with Zoom as like a live performance medium with these broadcasts of a show called Flight. And I was using Zoom and just like laboriously like spotlighting people to get them into the stream, and then passing that off to technicians. And I came to Andy and I said, hey, do you think it'd be possible to make Zoom function like a video mixer using MIDI commands? And Andy was like, I'll look at the SDK. And he came back to me and he was like, what about OSC? So, and then the pandemic happened and we went right into rehearsal with this show called Mad Forest up at Bard. I got hired, and then Andy was brought on to create ZoomOSC while we were rehearsing. So for me, it's always been like an artistic medium, and I'm an Isadora user. but what it allows my company, Anonymous Ensemble, to do is to use Zoom almost filmically. Like we, with our project Flight, we work with performers all over the world, and our primary goal is to like make it not look like Zoom. So we've got ZoomOSC in the programming, going from scene to scene to scene in Isadora, and it's all the shots are all pre-planned for the most part. I mean, I'm using a Stream Deck too to toggle through performers, but we're setting up each shot, and the great thing about it for us is that because Zoom is so accessible, people can have it. You know, we had somebody in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, on his phone on a motorcycle, and we can just like get that into the shot live and then mix it to like somebody on her roof deck in Singapore. So we're really thinking of it as a live film tool, and I'm working with Andy constantly on stuff, and now we're starting to integrate Streamweaver into that and sending protocols and sending OSC to people all over the place, to various systems, to get it all working in tandem. So that's the work.
Awesome. Thanks, Seaman. And Elle, I just we're Elle and I are frantically setting up a meeting to show Elle's integration in this on the side here, because I realized that this meeting I can't join via ZoomOSC, so we set up something on the side. But Elle, do you want to introduce maybe Isadora a little bit for those who aren't familiar with it, and then talk about how Isadora with the OSC listeners and senders and video ingest and all that works together to create work in between the two programs?
Sure. So I've also used ZoomOSC for a live stream performance with the auto cropping, and it's magnificent to get isolated feeds of performers. And the performance I did specifically, we put it all within a wrapper that sort of looked like Zoom, but then we were able to manipulate boxes and put people upside down and do things that are impossible in Zoom while looking like we were still actually using Zoom. And that was very interesting. And it was nice to have the flexibility to really do the things you actually want to be able to do in Zoom. Stage managers, I'm sure, want to just be able to, like, I want this box over there. Why can't I just do this? And when you pull in the isolated feeds, you can do that. You can put anything wherever you want. And you can also apply video effects, and you can even use a virtual webcam software to take the output of Isadora and feed it back into Zoom. So you could be in a normal Zoom meeting and apply video effects to your video feed that you're just feeding into the meeting. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, when we get your game online, I'll go back and we can show that later. But so yeah, that's like an overview of some of the use cases. I am, like I said, I'm happy to. I got QLab set up, Isadora set up, Stream Deck set up.
Let's have you show a couple of those things, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So we've got a question stacking up, and so we'll go ahead and have you show a couple examples. Well, actually, let's go to a couple questions, and then we'll go back. We'll come to yours. So let's break that up a little bit. So go ahead, Bill.
Okay, the first one from James in Dublin says, Mimo Live allows integration of API calls, I believe. Would it be possible to use ZoomOSC to control Zoom from within Mimo Live, in particular Mimo Live remote control surfaces?
Okay, so when it comes to the question of like, can X app work with ZoomOSC, the question really is, does it have the ability to send OSC or receive OSC? So I'm not familiar with the way that Mimo Live does API integrations. Maybe somebody on the panel is, but if it can send OSC, then yes, it can work with ZoomOSC.
That's great. Next question.
Chris Russo's up next from Red Hook. Regarding the auto cropper tool that is in development, what is the expected audio latency between ISOs, and are they expected to stay in sync? I have had some bad experiences with Skype and NDI.
Amen to that. So the way that auto cropper works, there's a couple different flavors of it, actually. We have one that's built in GLSL. It's a shader language. that runs in the GPU. And then we have one that's built by Bernie Bernstein, who was here earlier and had to depart, in JavaScript. Basically, the way that the autocropper works is that we did the work of building out a table of figuring out every possible thing that Zoom could do with the gallery view, and then building it programmatically to react to it. So the way that autocropper works, at least on the GLSL side, is we're not dealing with ISO audio at this point in the process. And we generally find that it is pretty fast. Like you can take audio line directly out of Zoom and pass it through the shader and get it back, and you're generally not super out of sync. ZoomOSC is not dealing with ISO audio though, so it's a little bit of a different animal. Every now and then we do, if we're going through a very complex video processing chain in Isadora, for example, where we have all these effects stacked and it's taking up CPU time or GPU time, then we will put a little bit of buffering on there to even it out.
And just as a note, for the panelists, for the most part, we have questions coming in via use Mukana for that. Next question.
Christian Turry in London is up next and asks, how does ZoomOSC work under the covers? Is it using Zoom API, and is that allowed by Zoom?
So it is allowed by Zoom. We've had a very nice conversation with them. The way that it works under the hood is it's actually two separate code bases. There's a code base for Windows and a code base for macOS, because Zoom's SDKs are in different languages across operating systems. It is a Zoom SDK app. When you launch it, it runs like the Zoom vanilla client, and it just has this OSC engine running inside of it to do other things.
Great. Next question.
We're moving to Chuck Wojak in Concord, California, who says, stability is my biggest concern. What are some things that could happen and the best ways to avoid it? For instance, a person turning off a camera or a dropped signal. Does that mess up the whole preset?
No. So the way that we have a couple of different ways that you can use ZoomOSC because of all the different use cases that we have just described, but there's modes where you can create like patches for ZoomOSC, and you can tell it, hey, this username is, I want to bind them with numeric control 3 or something like that. And you can build out all those bindings, and then regardless if the person's even in the meeting or not, you can still keep that space. If they drop, come back, whatever, you can react to it. I would even argue that it gives you even more reliability and stability, because when somebody disconnects, we tell you that they just dropped out of video. We told you that they just muted themselves accidentally, or whatever it was. And then you in your programming can say, okay, well, they just muted themselves, go unmute them now. And it will just blip. Or if they turn their video off, I don't want them to do that, send the immediate request to come back on. You can build out those contingencies because we're telling you programmatically what's happening in the Zoom call.
That's great. Next question.
Christian Turry in London is up next again with, is there an API for ZoomOSC? How does it integrate with other tools like Stream Deck?
And any other panelists that have been showing stuff, feel free to, if you want to add anything, go ahead and jump in. Go ahead, Andy.
I'll answer the API part, and then I definitely want maybe the panel to talk about the Stream Deck integrations, because there is a lot of variety there. But the API is available on our website. It comes with the download. You can view it there. We go through all the different commands that we support and what the parameters and the syntax is. We do have also a BitFocus companion surface that we've created that will get you up and running with the Stream Deck right away if you use the companion. But maybe Felipe could talk a little bit more about the companion and how that works and the different ways of working with a Stream Deck.
Yeah, so basically, Andy is working on the companion, which is another software that can run inside Stream Deck. And and this is going to be very powerful with, I think, all the things that you can do with ZoomOSC. What I'm building on the other side are tools that are designed to one-person shows, and that has to be as simple as possible. So I've created my own app on the default Stream Deck app. And you can just install it, and it will communicate with another app that I have running on the background. And this app does all the orchestration with ZoomOSC. So instead of providing a lot of options, for example, unmute someone, pin someone, I have one button that will unmute a person with a specific name and bring them on screen with you on OBS, do all the same things at the same time. So basically, I'm using ZoomOSC API, building my own app to coordinate that, and creating my own app on Stream Deck too.
I'll show you what the companion integration looks like here. So here, I basically just made some pages for pinning people, spotlighting people, turning video on and off. These are like states, so I can I can press it once down and then release it, and if it's red, I know that it's that's the video off, and if it turns back to green, then I know, okay, yeah, we're good. And then there's a bunch of other options that I can go through to to call the memory functions or pin people to a second display, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways you could build it out. You can make your own thing. You can do there's a bunch of different things you can do there.
Next question.
Moving to our own Victor Cahallo of Brookings, South Dakota, who, using QLab, how would I spotlight different members of the panel in video only while I'm playing a song?
Well, I can show the commands you'd use in QLab, and maybe Eamon, you would want to talk about how like programming QLab might work with something like that. But let me just real quick show on the Mac. Yeah. So if you want to do that, let's say you have a Zoom call and you've got somebody named Pat that you want to pin. Well, the first thing I'll do is I'll call the update command. And I don't have a great way of showing you side by side right now, the two different views, but take it on faith that what's happened here is when I called update, all of the users in the meeting became aware to ZoomOSC. And then all I'd have to do to pin somebody is fire Zoom/pins and then Pat's username. I could also use the numeric control bindings if you wanted to like have people rotate usernames but keep the bindings. You could do it that way too. But basically, when I just fired those two cues, I told ZoomOSC who's in the meeting, and then I told it to pin Pat. So that would be the way to do that. And then maybe even you could talk about like nonlinear programming in QLab, or like how that all comes together with group queues and things like that.
So it pins by name and not by position in the grid?
It can pin by name, by position in the grid, or by an index that you define.
You're a very smart young man.
Great. So I use a Stream Deck, and I use ZoomOSC for to do nonlinear editing. So I've got like my Stream Deck. This is programmed for one of my shows. And in this case, it would be like this was a dance piece, and I'm maybe like following the dancers around with cameras and switching from camera to camera using ZoomOSC to select them, and then also having in Isadora, I might have like preset cues also that like if I know that I want to move from a crossfade from this pre-recorded content into a dancer, then I would use ZoomOSC so that whenever I hit that cue in Isadora, it would automatically switch to that dancer wherever she is before engaging in the crossfade. And what's really useful about it is that combination of like live switching with the Stream Deck. Like I can follow a conversation, or just imagery that I'm interested in my preview monitors, but also can create crafted moments where I'm like really integrating this piece of content with this live element.
Go ahead, Victor. You want to add to your question?
Yeah, I do. So if I don't want to use the update command and I just want to randomly select people in the panel while the song's going on every 18 bars, is there a command within QLab and Zoom OSC that I can just do that, just a random trigger, so that I can pre-program that all in advance?
Yeah, so there's a couple things you could do to do that. So if you don't know who's going to be on your call before you set it up, which I assume is probably the case. Yep. Okay. So when you have people that have joined your call, just call the update command at like the top of show, and that will load everybody into memory, and then that'll be persistent for the rest of the run. So you do that first, and then you can have triggers in a waveform or time-based triggers or whatever you want in QLab.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
how we do it.
Right, exactly. So then add to that group that fires, just add an OSC queue. And when that group fires, have a random number or have something, in the range of the people that are going to be on the call in that setting. And
so in
when
the
you
marker, I can just put a random number in that marker and say, command here, random number. And
Yeah. I would fill it out and say, look, if you expect that you normally have an audience of like maybe 20 or 30 or whatever, on the call, and you want to pin 15, just pre-program in your patch, pin the 15th person in memory, and it'll just do that, and that'll give you the sort of the randomness of it, because the update command is kind of just pulling down from the API. But yeah,
And
you should have no problem with that.
Another option would be to use, like in QLab, make it a group that fires random child. And if it's just a bunch of OSC commands that are referencing indexes, then every time you hit that group, it would in theory be a different random.
So set up all the random childs, 10 random childs, and then have ZoomOS, have QLab trigger the different random child.
Yeah, they would just be it would be a group of OSC sends.
That's great.
And Isadora can do it in a multitude of ways. But.
Next question.
Kyle Hammond of Chicago has this one set up specifically. He's looking for an answer from Joe because it has to do with stage management. Is your integration creating a scenario in which the stage manager can call the show on multiple computers or stages from one location?
Oh, sorry, was that to me? I guess if that's for the ZoomOSC chat command, it's basically the receiving end only needs to install right now Node.js and then a code editor, which then takes that command from ZoomOSC. But the stage manager can be on remotely anywhere around the world as long as they're in the same Zoom call and as long as their name is exactly whatever Node.js set them as, so like SM, and then they have to send the exact command, which in my case is semicolon or G, that can send that go command.
Great.
That's helpful because anybody who has the right privileges will be able to send that, regardless of where they are or what computer they're on.
Next question.
Moving on to Chris Fenwick of the panel here. ZoomOSC and NDI, what features would you like to see Zoom support, and how would it be implemented if Zoom would support NDI?
Yeah.
So
big question.
That's a big one.
We had a long discussion about this one day, and like everybody says, oh, we want NDI, but it was like, well, what exactly would you like to see, and how would you like to see it implemented? Love to hear your opinion.
Yeah. So we're if I might jump ahead of you, Eamon, and then come back. We're working on an NDI integration for Zoom. We're going to give you individual ISO NDI feeds of all participants. We're still working on whether or not we can do that with audio. The way, Zoom technically, I suppose, has implemented NDI when it comes to the TriCaster, right? So if you have pockets like that, then then it might make sense. But it is like when it comes to ZoomOSC and NDI together, we're going to implement the OSC core from ZoomOSC into Zoom NDI, so you can call both functions and call NDI specific functions through it. Eamon, do you want to dream a little bit about what we need?
No, mine would be just a simple thing of like integrating a virtual input into Zoom so that you don't have to run NDI virtual input in addition and install. Like to get the NDI working, you've always got to install so much other software. That particularly when you're working with people who are less tech savvy, as I often am, I'm often working with performers, and getting them to go through the NDI hoops to get it integrated into Zoom is just usually more than the process can handle.
Yep. Next question.
Moving to Christian Turi of London, who comes in with, what is ZoomOSC's business model? Seems free at the moment.
Yeah. So why
everyone always wants to know what's the angle here? Like, how do they make something great and make a good product, and then they're not making any money? There's something going on here.
Yeah. I promise you, it's nothing nefarious. So the way that we operate, so ZoomOSC is our free product, and I'm committed to maintaining it that way. It's an investment for us. It is something that helps us when we operate as event services. Helps us, do our job better, and helps us maybe win some contracts here and there. So every now and then, I think it's good that we have this tool and it lets us offer good features to our clients. At the same time, it opening it up to the community allows the medium to advance, I think, and I think that helps all of us. So kind of the rising tide moving all ships model, I think, is realistic. I also think that it's a good way to kind of get people addicted to the type of production that we want them interested in, so that maybe they go check out Streamweaver, or they check out some of our Pro Tool things, or maybe Zoom NDI, right? Like it gets them.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Streamweaver is? Just a real quick overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So Streamweaver is a point-to-point transport system for video, audio, and control protocols. So what we can do is we can wrap like NDI and SRT and then send it over to another location and then decode it back into NDI and post it on the network. We can do the same thing with control protocols. So right now, actually, Eamon and I are working on a show where we need a producer at home to screen Twitter comments. And Eamon likes to use Isadora, right? So Eamon's made a control surface that lets the person just type in the Twitter comment and the handle and send it. It gets sent as an OSC message through Streamweaver to the production house, where it then gets written on screen and becomes, so it's a control protocol data sending thing. Lets you, if you're a light operator, you got a light board at home and you got an actor on the other side of the world, and they have an ArtNet interface, you can slide up a fader on your light board and that light will turn on by sharing the ArtNet over IP. So it's a protocol and it's in video transport.
That's very important to me. That last little bit. We've been talking a lot about controlling lights lately. So
yeah, I'd love to give you a demo at some point and show you how it works. And the same with the ATEM stuff. I think you can get a lot out of ATEM OSC and Streamweaver.
Yeah, ZoomOSC is really the gateway drug to Streamweaver.
Very good. All right, next question.
James Babbitt here in San Diego wants to know, Ramon Farrell, are there links to see shows that you've made using ZoomOSC?
Yes, sort of. Yeah, I can put my website into the chat. We don't actually make our shows public because the recordings, because we emphasize the liveness of it. So, but there's like little samples that we have, and can I just throw my website into the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Into Mukana is great.
Okay.
If you're in there.
And we've got some material too that we've backlogged that we can help, try to put a supercut together or something, maybe, if that would help. So
yeah, that'd be great. And because I think that one of the things that and one of the reasons I'm so interested in it is in the same sense that Andy's trying to push the medium forward. During this time, I think that what we're really excited about, or I'm excited about as well, is to redefine how we do events. Redefine what this looks like. If you look at the event that we're doing today, we have participants from every continent today in this event live. Every continent except Antarctica. Maybe Antarctica. Maybe there's some scientists down there on a thing going, wow, I got to use ZoomOSC. But the in fact, I think I got to find a way to invite scientists from Antarctica to join us, just so that we can say it's every continent, because this whole everything but Antarctica bothers me every time I say it. So anyway, but I was looking through the lists and looking through our data, and I was like, we really have a whole global community here having it, and then we have speakers that are from the US and Germany and Brazil, and it's kind of a magical thing that we're able to do. We're able to include much more of the world, and the tools like ZoomOSC really allow us to take this to a point where we're growing out of I kind of feel like we're growing out of the shell that real events had into this other thing that is no longer constrained by time and space. And as we go into that, and as those tools like ZoomOSC and Zoom itself allow us to do those things, it just means that we're able to connect a lot more of the world, into these conversations powerfully, not and have them be, in my opinion, I get more out of these sessions in the morning than I got out of most physical sessions, so I think that there's a real opportunity to keep kind of pushing that down the path, as we're kind of stuck in the position we're in. We're able to create something new. Next question.
Roscoe Jones is in with, has anyone used ZoomOSC to simplify the Zoom interface for teachers and instructors, or to make a remote teaching training room?
I know that Felipe has, definitely. I mean, that's like the premise of it, is that, you're trying to use a Stream Deck to get rid of all of the interactions you would have in Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, John. Oh, go ahead, Felipe first, and then John.
Yeah, the way I'm using right now is giving magicians ability to control Zoom without having to mess around with it. It's not exactly for educational purpose, but I can totally see how these tools could be used for that.
And John Edelson?
Yeah, teachers are like magicians in a classroom. I have a set of people who would love this, particularly your ability to be able to hit a key and get that student up there. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you about making a classroom screen, 24 screens that you would go to, and it would be used by literally thousands of people.
Absolutely.
Of course, yes.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I've been doing a lot of workshops with universities and with high school students on these technologies, and it's always surprising to me how quickly the kids pick it up. I've had a lot more success with college productions diving into these technologies and learning them because their students just get it so quickly than I've had with like actual professional theaters and whose production staff are just kind of terrified of the medium. So yeah, I think it's the younger generation is just going to grow up doing this stuff.
Next question.
Moving to Philip Kaiser, and by the way, we could use some more questions because people are going.
We've
through
got a
these
couple
really
things. Andy's got a couple things to show as well. So
oh, okay, good. All right.
We'll jump into that as well.
Is it best practice to log into the ZoomOSC client with a separate account?
Okay, so it depends on the use case. It's not always possible to originate the meeting you're looking for from ZoomOSC. For example, I kind of chose not to deal with SSO just because of all of the things that would happen if we started to get involved in like your account security and stuff like that. So I generally do recommend having your pro Zoom account or whatever create the meeting and then hand off hosting to ZoomOSC or just have it in the background as a co-host. I generally also suggest that like you don't while you do have the ability to join through ZoomOSC into the meeting and let that be your main client. I think the vanilla version of Zoom has a lot of great features, and I think there's a lot of good reasons to use that over ZoomOSC for like teleconferencing, right? So generally, I do hand it off. I have ZoomOSC join the call. I kind of let it run in the background doing its thing. And I just make it a co-host so it can call spotlight commands and things like that.
That's great. Next question.
Moving on to Philip Kaiser again from Orlando. Do the cameras need to be off to call the update? The documentation seems to indicate they do.
Only if you want gallery tracking. If you want gallery tracking, ZoomOSC has to watch the gallery form the first time, so it knows how to follow it from there. If you just like hit update and you're already in the middle of a gallery view, it doesn't know like what order people turn their cameras on, so it can't do the stuff that it does to figure out what the order is now. So we say that, but it doesn't actually matter for control purposes, and we can clean up the documentation to reflect that better. But it's only for gallery tracking that you need to do that.
Next question.
And Marty Arias of Silver Spring and here in the panel today, does it go without saying that ZoomOSC can control audio mixers as well?
So it depends on what you mean by audio mixing, right? Like mute and unmute, yeah, absolutely. If you actually mean like levels adjustment, one of the things that we're working on in some of our beta builds is this idea of far point control of talent. So using the foundations of the chat system that Joe was just talking about, we're going to start to expose things like mic input level and, camera selection and virtual background selection, things that I never really saw on the original ZoomOSC roadmap because I was always thinking it would be the technician's tool for a regular Zoom meeting. But under some circumstances, we have gotten requests for talent to use ZoomOSC and use the chat automations to have remote control of their interface so they don't have to go get talked through how to use it.
That's great.
Now, one thing that you could do with ZoomOSC is having it as a receiver to capture some commands. So some other person, a stage manager sends a command to ZoomOSC, and that command is interpreted to control a mixer, for example, or using Streamweaver.
So I don't know how many digital mixers use it, but like the Behringer X32, M32, those are OSC mixers.
Oh yeah, that'll work. Yeah, that'll work.
I mean, they're completely controlled by OSC. The PC app, the tablet apps, that's an OSC language.
Oh, that's great. That's very interesting. Next question.
Jonas Dotel has an interesting one. Most of us are pretty visual. Is there a plugin or could there be a plugin where you see the person on the stream deck that you're going to be pressing to highlight?
For sure, we're here to have a field day with this question. But So yes, this is something that we're working on. I know a lot of people are interested in this. The return line, getting actually the content and the names and things like that, is something that we're discussing integrating as like a pro feature in ZoomOSC. And the reason for that is that we've gotten a lot of requests to package ZoomOSC on like paid integrations and setups that people want to resell. And the reason that that feature helps is that you can build these sort of highly modular control surfaces. So we're working on like a Stream Deck integration that will actually show you on the on the button the name by pulling from the API, and then we pass it on to the Stream Deck so it populates correctly. So we're looking at that. It's something we're working on. It's going to probably be a pro feature, and it might take us some time to get it out the door.
Next question.
It'd be pretty awesome, I think. Jeff Weissman of Oakland, California. Does ZoomOSC provide a way to facilitate remote jamming among musicians and others of that type?
Well, we don't do audio sync in ZoomOSC. You're at the mercy of Zoom's audio at that point. So I'd suggest an additional solution alongside of ZoomOSC. But I can totally see a world where if you have QLab or something and it's like able to detect when a certain musician is playing, and then you're using ZoomOSC as your CDN, you could then have some sort of rule where like, okay, if the sax starts the solo, spotlight the sax, and you could build that out, and that could be kind of cool for improvisational work.
Yeah, in general, we've talked a lot about jamming, and the number one problem, even over, is the latency. So that becomes an issue. All right, next question. We're going to keep moving.
Okay. It comes from John Idelson in Monterey. How does the gallery selection work in a breakout room?
It depends on whether ZoomOSC is in the breakout room or whether you just have users who are in the breakout room. If you have just users in the breakout room, the main gallery view is what applies. If you go to a breakout room, what happens is Zoom actually, and you can see this when you change rooms, it actually like basically loads you into a sub meeting. And that they're just linked through the app, but at that point it should follow that view that you're in. It should always represent where you're at.
Yeah, it's a specific. We have large classes that have Zoom. You can pre-populate breakout rooms. So the question is, could over a semester when they break out to their sections, would you be able to know who you're going to be pinning? So the idea that they have a Stream Deck with the 20 people in that gallery room, and they would be able to hit anyone asking questions in a discussion in breakout rooms as they move between them. That's what we have a faculty member doing now. This would make that person's life amazing.
I believe sorry, go ahead.
Go, keep going, Andy.
I believe what we could do today with the features we currently have available is just have you hit the update button when you go into the new room, and then it'll learn who's in that room and start working with them.
Even with the videos coming on as soon as they get in, or do the videos have to be off?
No. It'll if they're coming in, they technically in the API they come in as off and they turn on the moment they arrive, so we can work with that.
And it accesses them by name, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all name dependent. So the actual like choice of who to do an action on can be identified by their index in the gallery view, their index in a patch that you write, or by their username. So you can.
So we did even random breakouts because the names are saying we know the names of everyone who do that. Oh, wow.
So just so long as you chase them, you go through the different rooms and you chase that person, then you can call it on them. Yeah,
that's interesting. And for the panelists, ask your questions in Zoom, in Mukana. Don't just keep them there. Go ahead. Next question.
I think actually he might have just answered it. Philip Kaiser says follow up on the update command. So if you don't gallery track, can you call pins by name or ID? Was that just what you were addressing?
Yep, that's correct.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany. Coming back from a breakout room, gallery tracking won't work, right? Is this, the shifting?
If you show up in a room, in a gallery that is pre-composed and ZoomOSC sees it for the first time, it doesn't know what to expect. We have some ideas about how to work around that, but I think at some point before we close for the day, we should have Elle show what the cropping is like, just so you get a sense of why this is the way it is, but we can come to that in a minute.
Whenever Elle's ready, we can jump to Elle. Elle, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's see it.
Okay. Let me just screen share here if I'm allowed.
I didn't want to put you on the spot, so it was just a.
Okay. So...
Whoa. So what are we looking at here?
you can see Isadora now, right, Andy? Yeah.
We can see it. Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure you weren't seeing my millions of Chrome tabs. So I have another monitor. Normally I would have ZoomOSC running over there with the participants in each quadrant. And there is a scene in this file which takes in the number of people in the gallery, the number of rows, the number of columns. You can fine tune it. There are some tools for that, for just getting it precisely right. And then you get the resolution of the display. And then it calculates where each participant will be, because it knows the math that Zoom does when it's placing X number of people in an X by X grid. So I can put these meeting participants wherever I want by switching to different quadrants.
Right. The key is that you have, you have stage 1, which is cropping, and then stage 2, which is deciding. So in the user actors that we made for Isadora, you use the auto cropper GLSL shader to get the zones, to get the people in the call, and then use the decider to decide, like, okay, this position in the gallery view is actually this person. So we're using the data that we give you about how many videos are on to get the cropping right, and then we're using the data that we give you about who is where to decide who should come on those ISO outputs.
But now is in that ISO output, how is it grabbing the full resolution for that? As opposed to the grid resolution.
So it's not. So you're right. So it's this.
Yeah, this is just screen capture, straight screen capture for this, which is why for this show I was using a 4K monitor to get the maximum resolution that was possible.
So you might have like 25 by 25 or whatever it is. And it would be dependent on the panelist, right? So if you have only 8 panelists across a 4K, you could actually get a reasonably good.
Yeah, the fewer people you have when you're doing screen capture, the higher the resolution you'll get, as well as like the higher the resolution of the display you're using to capture, the better the resolution you'll get. When the NDI integration comes about with ZoomOSC, it's going to be a game changer, because you'll be able to, you won't be dependent on, how expensive is your monitor and how few people can you pare down your show to.
Yep.
And the thinking is, with gallery tracking the way it exists right now, this is most helpful for the kind of stuff that Elle is doing, where you're skinning a Zoom call in a different way. So if you're not scaling up their video, and you're trying to, in your final product, represent them in the size and that they appeared in the actual meeting, then this is fine, because this will just this is just rearranging basically at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see, there's just a ton of stuff you can do with controls and surfaces to build out actual video integrative effects based on those the gallery videos that you can now deterministically access.
Yeah, so I was talking about doing, like, you can see I've got like a little fake Zoom outline. This would be the output for the show, and we were doing little things like moving the boxes around in ways that aren't technically possible within Zoom.
That's great. Yeah, amazing. That's really cool. A really, really great setup. Do we have more questions?
Yes, we have a couple more that have come in. Actually, 5 more that have come in. Spike Rogers in Berlin wants to know, well, now I know where my whole weekend is going. Mind-blowing. Andy, how much coding skill do I need to jump into experimenting with this?
So in terms of like coding skill, it should be 0. We do the coding for you, so you don't have to. When it comes to like programming in sort of a general sense, my suggestion, if you're just getting started, is to pick a controller that you think is going to fit your use case, right? If you are an avid QLab user, watch our video on getting started with QLab, and then you're programming in QLab, and then ZoomOSC is just there listening.
And you integrate with the free version of QLab, right? So someone could just like kind of learn how to kick the tires with it. That integration.
Yeah. So you should be able to call network cues from QLab. Isadora is also something you can download free, and you can't save, but you can play. BitFocus Companion, the emulator is free, so you don't even have to have a Stream Deck. You can just go open the web emulator and mess around.
That's great. Next
Another
question.
tip for the folks that have Stream Deck. On the Mac, you have the OSC app, so you can just install OSC remote on the Stream Deck, and you can send commands straight from it without having to code anything.
Next question.
is from
Leland. You can ask questions in Mukana. We're trying to keep it moving that direction. Next question.
Brett Dickus of Kansas City, Missouri asked the next one. Is there any major difference between the Windows and Mac's APIs? Which platform offers more access?
So right now, there are some differences. The differences are the result of us being a small team and really segmenting our development base, and the fact that the code bases are actually totally written from scratch. They don't share anything in common. But the APIs, we try to make as similar as possible. So like the access methods and stuff, everything that you have to do should look very similar. What I would say is check out our public Slack group where we post beta builds. The release version of ZoomOSC for Mac right now is build 18. In the power users group, the latest beta build is 183. So we integrate tons and tons of features before we push them to the public, because I take it very seriously to have launch stability. And so I don't push anything public until we absolutely are sure that it's going to be fine in production. So if you're looking for features that you don't see in the API, go check out the power users group and see what's in those beta Slacks, because you might find the feature there.
Yep, that's great. Next question.
And that might have dealt with Roscoe Jones's, which does ZoomOSC have a Discord? How can we help you test ZoomOSC? Would you send them to the Slack?
I would send them to the Slack. Yep, you can join it from our website. Yep.
And again, what we're going to do is we're going to start building a larger piece of what we're doing in our Discord. Hopefully, we'll be able to drag some of these folks in to at least check it every day and give us a little bit of, answer questions as our group comes up to speed. And we're going to have more dedicated hours and days to working on this, because I think it's really important that we get our head around it. In the same way that I've been talking about AR and USDZ and HDR, and we now saw that, those things, this is like one of those technologies that I think we as a group want to get a couple hundred people, thinking really hard on. Next question.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing already. Sky Gleason in Seattle says, ISO audio. Will Zoom allow you to pull the ISO audio while live?
Oh, this is fascinating. So my gut instinct was like, no, because it doesn't come to you here. But then you can record ISO audio when you set this up on disk. So clearly something's happening, right? So, that's the thinking. And that's when we're like, okay, well, without a raw data license, how do we get into that? And that's an active area of investigation for us.
Next question.
And that may be part of Chris's question next in Sacramento. You've mentioned Zoom audio ISO channels. How accessible are those? I know I can get access to them in local recording, but could they be made available to an outboard audio mixer?
Same question.
Same question.
It's probably, I don't know if it's my number one feature request for Zoom, but it's getting pretty high up there, of being able to get individual audio out of that, especially if it was able to connect to Dante. Just saying. All right, next question.
Yeah, Leland here in the panel is interested in whether ZoomOSC will work with Stream Deck's mobile app as well as the hardware device.
If you can send OSC, you can send to ZoomOSC. So if you can post an OSC packet on your network to the right location, you can work with ZoomOSC. So the Stream Deck mobile app, if it has OSC support, should be okay. If you have, which I'm not sure it does, but it's worth checking on that. But like your alternative would be like Touch OSC, which absolutely has OSC support and would do the job.
That's why I'm curious.
So just confirming Stream Deck has OSC.
Sorry?
Yeah, just because we tried to do this similar process with Central Command by Joe DeMax, and it works great with the Stream Deck device, but doesn't work so hot with the Stream Deck mobile app because it can't disconnect or connect to a device because it's just the software itself. It doesn't have a device to connect to do any MIDI transfer. So I was just curious if Zoom had that same effect. With
and that's why we made it OSC, right? So we could have gone the MIDI route, but we went with the networking route because that, now there's no need to have some sort of connection with it's just you post the packet out there, and if we see it, we'll do the thing you asked for.
That's great. Now we're running to the end of our hour, and I do have a question for you, Andy. Are any of you and Andy and Eamon, L, and Felipe, you're more than welcome to join our other. When you registered, you're more than welcome to join our little post show if you want to. If we'll create a special room for you, and I'll post. Let me see if I can post this real quickly into the chat. We'll get it to you. I think Andy, you have it. I don't know if you can email it to them. We had a little issue in Zoom with our chat, so we had to close it. So everybody who's living in Mukana didn't see any of the issues, but we closed the chat, so it's a little harder for us to get stuff in. So anyway, we'd love to have you guys join. I'm going to build a room in about a minute, that will be just ZoomOSC. If people want to continue to have a conversation and talk about that, they're more than welcome to. But you don't have to. We're just going to keep talking about it. We do the post show because, the pre-show and the pre-show wasn't enough. We decided to add a post show. So anyway, I just want to thank all of you that came, Felipe and Elle and Eamon and Andy. Really, it was very gracious of you to come and join us today and share all the knowledge. And Joe, I'm sorry, Joe. Thank you as well. Sorry, your screen was off under a window. So Joe, thank all of you. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us and really getting people excited here. Hopefully, we'll be able to do something useful with it. I think we got a lot of people here do a lot of Zoom, so I think there's a lot of excitement about it, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, and thank you to everyone that's been here. This has been a pretty active show. A lot of great questions, great discussion here. And just as a reminder, we can't do this without you. So this is a show that is by us, for us. It is driven by the entire community, all the questions and all the content. So thank you so much for coming and making this a great show. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and shut down this, but note for everyone,